He was born a slave. He had no rights, no property, no freedom of movement. And he became one of the most powerful men in Rome, not by escaping his circumstances, by deciding they didn't own him. Epictetus lived in the 1st century AD, in a Rome where your birth determined almost everything about your life. Slaves were property. They could be beaten, sold, separated from their families on a whim. The idea that a slave could have anything worth listening to, any wisdom worth recording, was genuinely laughable to most people with power. His owner, a man named Epaphroditus, once decided to test him by twisting his leg. Epictetus stayed calm and simply said, "You are going to break it." The leg broke. He said, "Did I not tell you? No rage, no begging. Just a quiet, almost clinical observation." That moment tells you everything about what he believed, and why it worked. The world Epictetus lived in operated on a simple assumption. What happens to you determines how you feel, and how you feel determines the quality of your life. If bad things happen, you suffer. If good things happen, you thrive. Your emotional state was considered the natural output of your circumstances. That's just how humans work. Most self-help advice today is still built on this assumption. Change your circumstances, and you'll change your life. Get the better job, the better apartment, the better relationship, and then you'll feel better. The circumstances are the variable. Your inner state just follows. Epictetus watched this logic destroy people around him and decided it was completely wrong. What he worked out, living in the worst circumstances most educated Romans could imagine, was that circumstances and your response to circumstances are two entirely separate things, and only one of them is actually yours. He divided the whole of human experience into two categories: things in your control and things outside your control. In your control, your judgments, your intentions, your desires, your response to what happens. Outside your control, everything else, your body, your reputation, your property, other people's opinions, other people's actions, whether it rains, whether you get sick, whether the person you love stays. This sounds clean when you list it out. The lived reality of actually accepting it is one of the hardest things a person can attempt. Because the mind doesn't naturally stay in its own lane. Something bad happens, and immediately you're in territory you can't control. Mentally wrestling with outcomes that were never yours to determine. Trying to force the world into a shape it refuses to hold. You replay the conversation, trying to rewrite what the other person said. You plan how to change someone's behavior when that behavior has nothing to do with you. You lie awake, grinding on circumstances that are completely fixed. Epictetus would not call that suffering. He'd call it a choice. A choice made automatically, unconsciously, but a choice nonetheless. This is the part where his teaching stops being interesting and starts being demanding. He said that the root of all human distress is wanting something you do and control to go a certain way. You want the job, and you don't get it. You want the relationship to work, and it doesn't. You want to be healthy, and your body has other ideas. The wanting itself isn't the problem. The problem is attaching your peace to the outcome. Because the outcome was never in your hands. His word for this was impression. Every event arrives in your mind first as a raw impression, before you've interpreted it. The job rejection lands. The diagnosis arrives. The relationship ends. For a fraction of a second, before the story starts, it's just information. What you do next, the meaning you attach, the emotional weight you load onto it, that part is yours. That part has always been yours. Read that again. He wasn't teaching people to feel nothing. He felt things deeply. He simply refused to let feelings dictate what he did next, or who he decided to be. The broken leg hurt. He didn't pretend it didn't. He just declined to add a story about humiliation or powerlessness on top of the physical pain. The pain was real, the suffering was optional. Now here's where this meets your actual life. You probably have something right now that you're carrying around as a fixed problem. A relationship that didn't work out the way you needed it to. A career situation that feels stuck. A family dynamic that has been the same painful shape for years. Something you think about regularly and feel bad about regularly, and the feeling bad seems automatic, like weather. Look at how much of your energy in relation to that situation goes toward the parts you cannot change. The other person's decisions. What already happened, what people think, whether things will go a certain way in the future. Now, look at how much of your energy goes toward the only part that is actually yours. How you respond, what you choose to do today, what meaning you attach to what happened, what you decide this situation says about you and what it doesn't. For most people, the ratio is almost entirely backwards. Enormous amounts of mental energy spent on the uncontrollable, almost nothing spent on the only variable that can actually be moved. Epictetus came from a place where the uncontrollable was extreme and obvious. He couldn't change being a slave. He couldn't change having a cruel owner. So, the divide between what was his and what wasn't was impossible to miss. He had no option but to get very good at operating inside the one small territory he actually owned. You have more external freedom than he ever did. Which is partly why the trap is harder to see. Your circumstances are changeable enough that it is easy to spend your whole life trying to fix them and miss the thing underneath that never gets addressed. The question he kept returning to was this: if everything external was stripped away, who are you? Not your job title, not your reputation, not your relationship status, not your health, not your bank account. Strip all of that. What remains? Is there anything there that is genuinely yours, genuinely stable, genuinely unbreakable? He believed the answer was yes. He spent his life proving it. What he built inside himself during years of having nothing was not optimism. It wasn't a performance of contentment. It was a real, tested understanding that his character, his integrity, his way of meeting each moment. Those things were his and only his, and no one could reach them. Not his owner, not Caesar, not bad luck or broken bones or death. That's not a philosophical position. That's armor. The kind that goes all the way down. You build it the same way he did. Not by reading about it, by practicing it, slowly, in the daily moments where your instinct is to react outward and you choose instead to move inward. Someone cuts you off in traffic, and instead of the automatic spike of anger at them, you notice the spike and ask what it's costing you. A plan falls apart, and instead of the spiral about how unfair it is, you ask what the next available move is. Small moments, same principle every time. What's mine here and what isn't? Work with what's mine. Release what isn't. He started as someone with nothing. He ended as someone nothing could take from. That was never about his circumstances. It was about what he decided to do with them. Drop a comment if this hit differently. The next video goes into exactly how he trained this in daily life.